Hi guys. So I'm taking a little break from First John today. The Lord just has this other little scripture swirling in my head for the past several days, and I was gonna do it yesterday, but I thought the love section was more important. But I still wanted to get to this, so we are in Luke 16 today. And a little bit of background. I was just going to tell you a little bit of a story first. So about my husband. So he first started his business. He works on cars about 15 years ago. And there were some things that he did that led him to the place where he is today. There's more than a few reasons that his privately owned small business did not fold like so many others seem to do within the first few years. So first and foremost, of course, God blessed his efforts and gave him exceptional gifts in the area of mechanical dexterity and diagnosis. So that was kind of like a given. Not everybody gets that. So that was definitely from God. But in addition to that, because a lot of times people have a lot of great abilities, a lot of gifts, but they still don't succeed in business. And so, in addition to that, Tim did and continues to do certain things that create success. And so I just wanted to go over a few of those things. So, number one, he treats every customer like they're the only customer. And I know that can get crazy and that can be hard to do when you have lots of customers, but he does that somehow. He's very relational in his approach, and he talks more than cars with his customers. Now, primarily, they talk about cars. In fact, in life in general, Tim primarily talks about cars. But by being more relational, in this way, he makes men feel a lot more welcome and more secure about leaving their cars. It isn't forced. It isn't fake. He's naturally relatable kind of guy. He's a people person. He's upstanding and he's honest in his dealings. If there's ever error or even part failure or things like that, he makes it right as much as it depends on him, and he takes personal losses while giving his customers preferential treatment over even himself. You don't find that a lot today. I think it used to be the norm, not so much anymore. But he's kind of like an old timer, I guess, even though he's still young. Next week's his birthday, turning 39. But anyway, Tim is very upfront about what needs done, what the costs are going to be, why he's choosing to do the things the way that he is or use the specific parts that he's going to use. So people are never surprised. People are rarely surprised about what their bill is going to be, and he's not surprised about what their expectations are because all of that is talked about and communicated very clearly up front. So like a car treatment plan goes into effect before the hands ever get greasy. This is a good practice. Tim's committed to excellence. His shop might as well be a showroom. No one wants to take their $562 million car to a sketchy dump, right? So from his mechanics to his mop bucket, Tim does whatever it takes to make things look, sound, feel, run to the very highest standard. He's committed to those details and to excellence. And then finally, Tim is mutually invested in the success and best performance of each and every car that comes into his shop. He understands that his customer's success is his success, and he works on all the vehicles the way that he would if he were working on his own car. So those are just a few of the reasons why Tim makes a good businessman. But don't worry, I'm not here to do an infomercial for the business. I've just been thinking on this specific verse for the past few days in Luke 16. It's Luke 16:10. And so I'm taking a little break from 1 John to go over the context of Luke 16. So Jesus once told a story about a dishonest manager of money. The manager was being fired, and he knew he needed to find a way to fend for himself in the world. A few things that I noted as I studied this passage was that the man knew his weakness. Okay, so he could recognize his weakness because he said, I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. So he knew he wasn't able-bodied, yet he knew what he wasn't willing to do. So he had some self-respect there. And he wasn't in denial about his situation or his ability to change his boss's mind about him. He didn't waste time on those things that he couldn't change. Instead, he sought a solution to his unemployment issue. So what did he do? Because the manager had been given authority over all of the accounts of his boss, he decided to begin canceling debts that did not ultimately belong to him. So that once he was out of a job, those whose debts he canceled, he would have favor with them. So he's doing this to make friends. The gifts of debt forgiveness that he gave were not his to give. The bills owed belonged to the boss. But because he had the authority, he forgave the debts. The good that he did toward these people, if we can call it good, it was good for them, right? Like, we're getting a free bargain here. The good that he did was self-serving, though, in an effort to gain favor with those people. And somehow, despite his dishonesty, we see even his boss coming, the one he stole the finances from, and saying, good job, right? He's commending him for his wisdom and his shrewdness in doing this because, it wasn't honest, but it was wise. You got the job done. This is what his master is saying. And that's what businessmen are all about doing, getting the job done. Businessmen, they love innovation. They can appreciate outside the box thinkers even when it's at their own expense. Like this guy. He's like, well, I'm the one that suffered at the wrong end of that, but good job. Like maybe I wouldn't have thought of that, right? So Jesus says in Luke 16:9, and I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. So what does that mean? In other words, use your earthly wealth and means, all that stuff that you have in your life, use that, your money and stuff, to advance the gospel, like this guy did to advance his own worth in the people's eyes. Use your earthly wealth to make friends like this guy did. But once you do, introduce them to the kingdom. Now, this is not a bribe. This is not a fake, relationship or anything of that sort. That is not what Jesus is doing. He doesn't want us to have ulterior motives. Like, that's not it. The comparison here is not one-to-one either. I mean, Jesus doesn't want us to rip people off, obviously. Jesus isn't saying to be dishonest. He doesn't want us to bait and switch people, bribe them, merely pretend friendship, or anything along those lines just until they hear the gospel. Nothing like that, because there are churches, I mean, I have experienced this, that do this. They don't really want you in their life. They just, it's almost like a bait and switch, like they use you. So, anyway, he certainly doesn't want us to use people in any way. What Jesus is saying is that the worldly goods we have ought to be of far less value to us than the souls of the men around us. So much less, in fact, that we're willing to sacrifice all of their debts against not us, but the debts against our master. They're ultimately all debts, all sin is against God first and foremost. So we're willing to cancel those debts by the authority given to us in Christ, forgive them, extend forgiveness to them on behalf of God the Father, our master, in order to build a relationship with them. That is what this guy did. Now, albeit he was dishonest in his dealings, that's not what Jesus wants us to do, but it's the same kind of a scenario that Jesus is saying, go and do this. unlike the dishonest businessman, we don't need a place to stay, and our motive for canceling debts that don't belong to us even isn't self-serving. Rather, it's kingdom serving. So stay with me here. When we forgive debts that ultimately belong to God, because anybody that sins against us, ultimately that debt is a sin against God. So when we forgive that, though the debt isn't ours, God commends us like the businessman's boss. All debt is ultimately owed to God. We will be received in eternity, Jesus says, if we learn to be wise and forgiving when working in our Father's business. Not because works earn salvation. Don't get that. That's not what I'm saying. But because there will be many faces found in heaven that we recognize because of our reaching for them in honest relationship. Are you with me? Okay. This is a little bit confusing, I think, but I think when you really think through it and meditate on it, it's pretty obvious. Let's not forget that everyone that we meet has debt with God and others if they don't know Him yet, if they have not been born again. So we bring them into the kingdom by extending forgiveness of that debt on behalf of our master, like the businessman did, through grace and mercy and His forgiveness. And then when all that we possess on earth is gone, because we can't take it with us, Jesus says, guess who will be in eternity to welcome and thank us for our mercy extended toward them, which really wasn't our mercy at all, rather our master's mercy that was merely extended through us by His authority. Okay, and the master will commend us for our wisdom in so doing. So then Jesus says the verse that I've been considering. He says, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little will also be dishonest in much. Nothing belongs to us in this world that is material. We're merely stewards of all that belongs to God. If we have material wealth and we don't act wisely, give generously, steward faithfully, then why would God put us on a real task, a task of soul winning, right? One that involves the stewardship of souls, because that's the real task. Okay, that's the purpose of life, right? Glorify God, make disciples. So you can make all the money you want, but it's not going to mean anything in comparison to those who are making disciples. Making money and making disciples are two very different things, and I can't tell you how much more joy there is in making disciples, but you got to do it for yourself. Anyway, truly, if we can't manage what ultimately belongs to our master that's material, why would He give us anything to manage of our own, that really belongs to Him, which is, other people and the shepherding of other people. So anyway, Jesus says here we cannot serve both God and money. He ties the whole money thing in. He says we cannot elevate material wealth if we love money, fear money, worship money, worry about money, want for money, or have an otherwise unhealthy relationship with money. We will not be able to serve God rightly. So God's got money. That's something that just kind of occurred to me as I was studying this out. God's got money. He doesn't need ours. We should be giving. We certainly should, but we've got to trust Him and follow Him when all the world is calling us to chase money, because it's empty. It really is. So while all of that is true enough, that's not really where I was headed. I just wanted to give the context. And so here is the take home. The question that's been swirling in my mind the past few days is, am I being faithful with little? In the areas where I've not yet seen the advancement or the progress, at least to the degree that I'm believing for, am I being exceptionally faithful with the baby bits and the humble beginnings I have been given? Are the first things still first? Am I being faithful and wise with finances? Am I being fully faithful to the few souls that I've been given to care for? Am I being a faithful friend to myself even? Because, that's important. I mean, it sounds selfish, but am I being faithful to myself? And what I mean is, you really can get burnt out. Nothing will cause a sister to crash and burn better than burnout. So you really do have to watch yourself and rest yourself, because you can't offer rest to other people if you aren't resting. But am I being as wise as the businessman when it comes to stewarding God's gifts and his wealth? Because, he has given all of us gifts, and I just shrug my shoulders because there are so many people that I see, that I interact with, that they are just honestly, truth be told, they're just so much more talented than what I am in so many areas, and I just can appreciate their gifts so much. But at the same time, I see many people not using their gifts, and I'm like, man, if I had that kind of charisma or that kind of stage presence or whatever the gifts that are I see, I'm like, I just don't understand. Some people don't, they just don't live into their gifts, and I don't know. But am I stewarding God's gifts that he has given me wisely? Am I freely given to, am I giving to the debtors that are all around me, using the authority that I have been given to forgive debts and build real kingdom relationships? Because that's where it's at. That's where Jesus is talking about here. That's why he tells this story. So here's the contrast. Am I working for my master in efforts to secure friendship and a home for not myself like the businessman did, but for those I'm offering the debt forgiving deal? Or are my efforts merely money-making? Are they self-serving? Are they man-centered? Are they master-robbing? Because we can rob God. We can rob him of his glory and other things. But if we're faithful, we must be faithful with few, with little, with less than, with small starts. And if we refuse faithfulness for these humble little seeds and the small somethings that we already have, then we can rest assured that we will not be given anything greater. And if we are somehow stumbling into something bigger than what we already have been given, we aren't going to last very long, because we're not ready and we're not equipped and we're not prepared if we're not already being faithful in just the small things. So all let's say, don't give up, be faithful with the few. And I think it was Jim Carrey, not a big fan, but Jim Carrey, I think, said, I was just reading last night, that he wished, it's something, this isn't an exact quote, but something along the lines of, he wished everybody could be rich and famous so that they could see that that wasn't the answer. And he's so right, because there are so many things, honestly, there are so many things that, when I was younger, I wished, like, oh, I hope I can do that one day. All Lori's dreams come true. Let's just put that out there, because I do. I'm kind of like a goal-oriented person, and I kind of chase dreams. That's what I do. But there's so many things that I have accomplished that were kind of on my bucket list, and I look back and I say, yep, thought that would make me happy, thought that would satisfy me, but the only thing I have truly found that satisfies is living into the call of God and doing that which he calls us to do. So there's that. I hope you guys have a good day, and thanks for listening, and I hope that's helpful. See you later.